All right. Well, hey everybody. So I'm Elliott. Elliott Jones. I'm here with the City of Oakland and the Oakland Fire Department. The Oakland Macro Program stands for Mobile Assistance Community Responders of Oakland, and I know that's a mouthful, so it's much easier just to ride on with macro. Um, this came out of as many of us probably know, a lot of change was spurred over the summer of 2020, and Oakland, which has a let's just say a very involved history with kind of police overstepping their bounds and violence and different things, but also activism at the community level to want change. We don't have to reference historical stuff, but the Black Panthers and some of their stuff with the Universal Food Program and how those would go on to make another impact. Well, the community was demanding that something be done to curb these potential for violent interactions with police. And while there hadn't been particular action in Oakland, there was a lot swirling around the Bay and the country at the time. And Oakland thought it was best to act. So they commissioned a study. This is all before Elliott. Um, they commissioned a study, and that study made the suggestion that an alternative response program was possible if it were to be focused on the areas in East Oakland and West Oakland. Tragically and historically neglected and devoid of most services that the city has, and it is perpetually caught in the cycle of violence and trauma that afflicts a lot of community in need. Um, the initial idea was that this would live within a local nonprofit group or a couple of them, and they would come together to find a way to do this. Um, or that it could potentially be its own city office, similar to the Department of Violence Prevention out here. And this was going along as if it would be the plan, and then suddenly it all blew up. Many of the initial nonprofit stakeholders uh, butted heads, and the city in a council meeting, it's we joke about it often, an infamous council meeting where the fire department, there for something totally unrelated, was told like maybe this would work with the fire department. And from there, it was given to the fire department, which kicked off this rush to get things figured out. They had never done something like this. They are in the cycle of the response and how these sort of folks in need can kind of clog up the emergency services system. And I don't say clog up as if they are a problem, it's just the volume and the issues are so deep here that it's often that police and fire are tasked with things that aren't necessarily out of their scope of understanding, but well beyond what their duties should be. And so I was brought on in November 1st, and pretty much my first week on the job, it was like, well, why isn't the program here? That was what the community wanted. And I know that we all understand the community has their idea of timeline and how things work. But when you pull something out of the potential for a nonprofit or private sphere and put it into local government and the fire department, it there's a different speed of which things operate. And there's many other stakeholders that need to be involved. Um, Before I did come on, I think one of the greatest innovations was that we figured out how our team structure would be. Beyond the areas of which we wanted to operate, the idea was the most bang for our buck, the most impactful. Can y'all hold on one second for me? I have a group over here, just got to make sure they're doing something. I'll be right back.
I'll edit this
Want to
section
see
out.
his other bulletin board, Sister Circle.
Yeah, shift it over just a little bit.
So sorry about that. We're, juggling many things. I got to make sure everybody's here. Um, so they created these two positions. They thought the responder crews would work best as with an EMT to provide basic life-saving, not like if needed life-saving stuff, but that's not their main thing. It's small injuries, minor injuries, and advisement. Really to put eyes on a medical issue, take vitals, and if it needs to be scaled up to further medical transport, that can be initiated. But they also agreed with the unions out here on a secondary position, which was the community intervention specialist. This role, unique to Oakland, takes somebody with no minimum requirement, no pre-qualifications or minimum requirements, and gives them an opportunity to participate in this program. They are They bring lived experience. They bring intimate knowledge of the nonprofit and resource sphere because of that lived experience, whether it's justice involved, whether it's houselessness. Our folks brought a passion for Oakland and an understanding of what it's like to be in the position of those we're hoping to help. In addition to that, once I was hired, we really tried to narrow the scope of what macro would be able to do. Police initially were engaged and they sent over a whole list of stuff that they would like us to do. And that's understandable. They looked at what was clogging up their system. And truthfully, it's stuff that they can't clear and we couldn't clear either. I understand how the 911 system works and that there's things that can sit in queue sometimes for hours, if not days. And if we could put eyes on it, yes, that would clear that up a little bit, but Oakland's a massive city, and with a responder force the size I have during the pilot, that's just aspirational. But how can we make the most bang for our buck? We believed it was focusing on wellness checks, low acuity health challenges, and then community disturbances, whether it be a noise complaint, whether it be parking or a loud car just sitting outside your house blaring music. These are things that we thought we could really handle. We do have a couple rules for our responders. They do not go in homes. They can only go into certain government buildings. They do not go into the homeless encampments. These folks have on polo shirts, jackets with a flashlight and a radio. Without that protection, I can't put them into something where there are too many unknowns. The risk is just too high. But that limited mandate should allow us to kind of be a little bit more flexible with the areas that we serve, expand a little quicker, and really determine what a result can be. We've said from day one that what we're really trying to shift in the minds here in Oakland is what the community expects as a result. What do they understand when you call for service? What is actually going to happen? We're not going to remove somebody against their will. We're not going to force you into care. We're going to show up. We'll give you some clothes. We'll give you a blanket, water, some snacks, some food, talk to you. If you'll want us to do a medical check, we'll do a quick med check, but we're going to leave you there if you're not bothering anybody. Now, if we get another call about you in a couple hours, we'll come back and do the same thing. We're going to keep offering the care and keep meeting with compassion, and hopeful that you will one day want to accept this care and we can take and get you into the service community, the broader service community of Alameda County, which we're slowly starting to find our way to integrate in. If you had asked me in January, how would I have liked our rollout to go? Because that was really just all the startup stuff I was just talking about. I would tell you, I want full teams ready to go, 16 hours of coverage, both zones of the city, like, let's get it. Like, that would have been my initial thought, but you can't let perfect be the enemy of good. You got to work with what you want, because we're hiring from this other population with our CIS role. We've had some challenges with background checks, and it's something that can't be dealt with within the city of Oakland. If you get pinged, you get a ping. And some of the things that people were pinged on, honorable discharge in the early 90s, like, that doesn't make any sense, but this is what they were held up for. And some of them are still held up for these things that happened decades ago. So we are trying our hardest to adapt to those changes in schedule. This does create a ripple effect with our training because trainers are not available at your beck and call. We tried to set up an academy to really maximize our cost efficiencies, but instead we're learning that a phased rollout is what we're going to have to deal with. There's going to probably be 2 or 3 academies this first year, and it's going to potentially double my overall training costs because I have to bring people back in. Now, the plus is I've been able to understand immediately that certain trainers are not good for us. We brought in one of the local community groups who was instrumental in the initial funding and support of macro, or the advocacy behind it. We brought their trainers in, and they are more about what's going on with the police, and we are within the fire department. So my team, although they can acknowledge this and they can feel it and have their own opinions, most of them want to work within the system. Most of them want to see or have aspirations to, some of them, I mean, to be firefighters or things like that. So they feel very comfortable within the system. So having people come for 2 days and talk about tearing it down and challenging cops in the field, it just didn't land. And it didn't need to land. And I thought they were going to share about their experience as a mobile response provider, but they didn't talk about that once, which raises some red flags. I know they're only operating a couple days a week, but that's what we had assumed the training was about. And we had asked it multiple times, but they are in their focus is in their focus. I think the learning from that is my crew can see these are the different models, and this is where we want to be different. Um, when it comes more to our rollout, we hired empathetic and caring people. We hired these folks and they lead with their heart. Some are EMTs, understand process and are very driven by that, but we are buttressed by another position that is more compassion led. My biggest issue with the rollout is getting the crew to understand the value of numbers, of calling in incidents. Don't think something is an incident, rather think something is an incident, call it in, and we can determine later that it wasn't. Um, After my 3 days, the first day they called in everything, 9 calls. That's pretty good. Let's just take that. We had 3 teams operating in a zone. That's about 3 a team in maybe a 6-hour period. That was okay. They're only doing on view work. So they are only doing on view work where they are determining a wellness check or a sleeper, and they're engaging based on that. Until we get our numbers set up and we begin to promote it, there's no sense in flipping that switch. And I'll get to more of that in a little bit too, some of our other challenges. But the first day they called in 9, it was great. The second day, and this was like day 6. So they'd been on 5 days straight. They had a Saturday, day 6, our first launch. Sunday, the temperature came down a little bit, and we only got 3. Now that's 1 per team after a long day. That's great. But then Monday, 3 teams out, 1. And when they came back in to debrief, there had been some challenges. Folks were tired, you could just tell. And then it was like, oh, well, we didn't think that was 1. And that's what I have to nip in the bud. It's like, you're not here to think, you're here to call it in. Like, you need to call this in. We need to track your time, your action, your effort. If you're breathing on the scene, I need to know, because this is how we support the program. So that's something that we have to kind of shore up our policies and procedures on, make sure that there's an even distribution of work in the rigs. We have 3 to a car right now, with 1 with 4. And I'm going to break that up and get as quickly as we can to our 2-person to a rig program. And that's really what we want. And we're going to work for the rest of the month, try to just get to a 7-day posture, 2 people per rig, get that schedule down, as well as onboarding this next academy, which starts Monday as well. So the rest of my week is kind of distilling the learnings for the first couple of days. We have to get minivan organizing things for the back seat so everything has a place. We have to discourage our crews from going out of the way to help. If you can't help them with what's in the van and you can't connect them to service, keep it moving. We had an incident where somebody approached our crew after they had helped somebody, and then this kicked off an hour long where one of our members took it upon herself to go into a store and go shopping for this person. It's like, that's not on the clock work. And chief was in my ass this morning. So go and get your calls. But that's just also how we think about things. Like, I saw 3 potential calls on the way in today. And that was, that's how I look at that, but I have to find a better way to distill that to the team. The next steps that we have is really some more immediate training. They have a couple today, but there's also their benefits stuff, which is why it would have been probably a little bit more advantageous if we had been able to push the rollout back until May to get all this stuff out the way, really work, and then announce. But there has been pressure. I still think 5 months from my hire date is kind of wild to throw something out there, but it is what it is. It's better to limp out than not come out at all, because at least we got these learnings before the next group came in, and we'll have an older group, more CISs. We feel that we'll now know where we have to shore up on that side of things. a couple challenges that I think are, and really if anybody here has any solutions, I know this isn't our full group, but just for the recording, if anybody has any training for dispatchers as it relates to this, that would be extremely helpful for us. The Oakland Fire Department hired a new dispatch manager in February, I believe. And so we never started our conversation with dispatch until that day. And fire dispatch is drastically different than PD dispatch. Then we joke, like when PD calls, they want to ask you a bunch of questions: who, what, where, when, and weapons. When fire shows up, they're like, get out the way. We know what we have to do for the most part. Put out a fire, life-saving stuff. It's very, different interaction. So getting the fire dispatchers in our system, our city, who are accredited, it's a award-winning shop, getting all that lined up. It's taking a little longer than we expected. We have to kind of come up with training for them on the fly, and also train our people on radio etiquette on the fly. Some are better than others, but there has to be a standard that we're setting. Would I've loved a month of just doing training on the radio? We're going to try to kind of get that right now. But that's just kind of the startup mode of where we are. But once they're trained one time, I believe we're going to be great. And just like with the training, like I told you all, it's becoming much more expensive having to kind of plan this way. But if I can make sure that the institutional knowledge is left behind at the end of the pilot phase, well, then it's a cost that we won't have to exert, every year or multiple times a year if we can keep that learning in-house. Yeah, so those are really the most immediate things as it relates to the rollout. Got to really reinforce the importance of numbers. Got to really talk about everybody pulling their own weight. Some of this was leadership stuff. Some of this is leadership stuff, and that's on me. I think it was inappropriate to work them 8 days straight. There was reasons why, but it wasn't worth it. The result of yesterday, if I had just shut them down Monday, given them a day off to recoup, I think we all would have been better for it. But there was a need in my eyes to get 3 days of data. But on the back end of a week of finishing your training, a lot of energy with that, then rolling out Saturday and Sunday, I should have been a little bit more responsible. That being said, you adapt and you overcome. We have a week to refine things, shore up policy, and reinforce some of our training before they roll out again on the 18th at, dual zone coverage, simultaneous zone coverage in our 2 zones, and then 7 days a week. It'll only be a day shift. That'll allow me to kind of play with the time. 9 to 5 is always good, but if we wanted to do a day where they did, 10 to 6 or noon to 8, that also works. I have a little bit more limitations on my time, and since we don't have supervisors in place, I have to be on when they're on. So it's also about balancing how do we get our admin stuff done, our grant work, our budgets, while we're building this. It is truly a building the plane while you fly it. And while this isn't to complain, it's I wish we could just get a little bit more time sometimes, but it is what it is. We'll be better for the 18th, and I believe we'll be better into May. I hope to have everybody fully trained and ready to deploy by May 20th, and then I could operate 2 shifts, both impact zones, start to get into other areas. I could do that over the course of the summer, and hopefully be able to prove concept by December, so that sorry, sidetracked. By December, in hopes that January we could flip the switch to be 24/7 citywide. That's the goal, and it's not insurmountable, but these learnings and these next really 6 to 8 weeks, I feel are going to not make or break, but really set the tone. If everybody can get on board, and it would help if I had their uniforms and things all standardized, but that's, again, building the plane while you're flying it. Everybody's backed up, and that's no excuse, but if I had time to line this all up, it would have been a much smoother thing. But that just means that when we come out and start accepting calls from the 911 system and activate our number, we can step our game up at every level. We can have uniforms and badges and marketing material, much of which we're all producing. I'm asking our responders with a passion to help. The next phase for us is understanding the resource network so we can refer if need be and also make these connections, but always setting the tone of what expectation could be. Like, we're not going to show up and just remove somebody, but we're going to show up and try to help. But I know I've been talking a lot, so I can definitely, shut up and answer some questions if you all would like.
Elliott, just first question, would you just run, I know you know this, but the rest of us don't. What's your background? What's your experience? How did you get in this situation to have this horrendous task, this Sisyphean task?
Thanks, Jason. I'm born and raised in Oakland. I'm actually a second generation City of Oakland employee. My mother worked for the city for 35 years. My stepfather worked for the city. My dad was actually an activist attorney out here, suing police departments for police misconduct. So I'd kind of known about justice involvement and justice reform and community development just growing up. My own path, just every step of the way kind of prepared me for this. Worked in government relations and lobbying, worked in early education reform at the local government and state level. Have done gun violence efforts, not gun violence myself, but gun violence prevention efforts and community awareness efforts as a way to kind of build from within in South Florida. So having hit a couple of different areas on my career path, I was able to come back to Oakland actually through a tech job. And thank God, was able to pay some bills while I got settled back here. And then I really got lucky. I met my supervisor at a park while they were just talking about the program. I think it was after the council meeting where they decided to give it to the fire department, or right before. And it was the three groups that wanted it, and I talked to all three, and the fire department was the last one, and talked and understood my knowledge of the community and city services and how we want to deliver something and have a standard. And I was given this task, and I'm truly honored. Like there's a lot of stress that comes with it, a lot of challenges, but if we work this out the right way, it'll outlast all of us. And while they'll never, I don't care if my name is attached to it forever. It doesn't matter. The fact that, in 20, 30 years, I'm walking around and I see a macro crew, I'm like, I'll know. And that's truly what drives me. So this is maybe the most eyes on a project I've ever had, because people want to see it work and they're extremely involved. Hence why the chief was like, how do I explain only one call was generated on a Monday? And it's just like, well, it's day 3. So we're gonna continue to refine and grow, but it's all a part of the process, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Let's hear from Elizabeth.
Hi, yeah, I'm so glad you're here. And thank you. And just sounds incredible to be unfolding this, and especially in such a big community. And I hope we can keep talking. But my question really is about how it's been to be embedded within fire, and kind of what do the firefighters think about what you're doing, and how is that community building and relationships, and the difference between a fire response and what you're trying to do. And I know it's day 3, so you might not have a lot of evidence points, but that's something we also kind of encounter as culture differences in our responses.
Well, I agree totally. It's been a big part of us. We've had to dispel some rumors from the rank and file firefighters, and to that end, we're actually having a meeting with any members of the fire department that want to attend this Thursday. Some of their concerns were, are they going to be in our firehouses? Are they going to be, are they going to have keys to our houses? And it's like, I don't have a key. Why would my people have a key? If they are guests, they'll come and knock on the door and need to use the bathroom, and we hope that there's some camaraderie in that. I think when they do sit down and think about it, the firefighters understand the value and they want to see macro succeed, because they are getting multiple calls to the same sleeper, to the same people in the community, and it is tying up resources. I went on a call my first ride along with fire. And I've resisted. I grew up out here, so I'm not necessarily interested and I don't feel the necessity to do a police ride along like I know it. But a fire one was very interesting to me. Now, I thought that this was going to be some big thing that we did. They pulled out the truck. They just went across the street to McDonald's. So this is a big truck, four people in it to drive 150 yards, and they needed to be there. The gentleman was he needed medical care. His blood, there was a lot wrong, and he was resistant, and they didn't want to have to force him, but then they were able to get this there, and that would have been a macro call. You know, we would not have been able to transport him, but we could have talked to him, and we would not have needed to bring a whole rig across the street. So that would have kept them at lunch. That would have kept them where they needed to be and saved the department however much money. That distinction in cost savings is what we're first going to prove in the fire department. And then we will be able to extrapolate that to the police as we start to accept calls from them. So that's where we're going to show our true value across the landscape. Culturally, I couldn't be happier to be within the fire department. It's no, you know, in Oakland, not too many people have any bad things to say about the fire department, which is always a plus.
Yes.
But we do have a new chief. He's about 10 months on the job, 10, 12 months on the job, 37th fire chief of the city of Oakland. And he has also led this. He's a hell of a leader, Dr. Freeman. And he has really helped us set a cultural tone that we want to be at the highest standard possible. He's gotten the department to these different levels, and we want to match him on that. So, you know, being able to prioritize our communications and our learnings and really strive for excellence, and knowing that macro has a place within the landscape of city services. You know, I'm telling people I'm building the fourth response service. They have medical, they have fire, they have police, now they have macro.
Yes.
And we should really be considered the first responder. Let's just put eyes on it. If police have to take a second response posture, or fire has to take a second response posture on many of the daily mundane things that happen in this world, fine.
Yes.
They will have their opportunity to run and have the cavalry come and all that good stuff. That's their job. But if we can take this other stuff off their plate, even if it's just be like, oh yeah, this is a PD call, y'all better get over here. We're not going to stick around, but they can come there. But again, we don't have the protective capability to. But that's really my personal goal for this, is if everybody sees it, that's how this should be. Quadruple my force, allow these people to be out here putting eyes on stuff, and then they can make the determination, you know. At least sit you like, hey, these are kids over here, they're nonviolent, this person's having this, he needs to be 5150. We called we brought you here because only police can call our CAT team, our Alameda County 5150 team. So I like that we have a cap on what we can do. I think my responders wish we could do more. And that may come, but for what the program needs and how I understand the community wants to see it roll out, it's that we have to be more present and visible and just addressing things. And not everything is going to result in somebody moving down the street. You may just be talking to somebody 4 or 5 times a day for 3-4 weeks. And then on that, I guess, 100th time, they will say like, all right, let's go. You get me into a bed. And then that's the W. They haven't been justice involved. They haven't gotten into that thing. They haven't utilized city services or fire services for crosstown transport. You know, it's there's a huge opportunity in this. And I think that's only possible because we're in the fire department. We'll get over some of the concerns of the rank and file, and they will see us out and start to understand a little bit better. And as we improve in dispatch and everybody talks, you know, it's like high school in here sometimes.
Oh yeah.
But once we do all that, it is, I think we'll be really on a path to success. And what I'm trying to develop is like internal measures and internal cultural stuff with macro, where we can set a high standard at the beginning. You know, I didn't understand how purposeful language would be. We have a trans responder, and in our whole policies and procedures, we only, I don't know the term, but like super gendered, or like we like too many he's and hims and hers and his, like that was only like 5 of those, a whole like 20-page document. So that was like for us, like, okay, at least and she's helping us be better. She's helping me be better with my language. And it's, Chief is extremely intentional with the way he speaks. So being able to build this and make sure that they feel supported and seen and belong has been big for us. And I'm grateful for her. And her keeping me honest and keeping me on my game with this, because we want to pass that on to whoever sits in this seat.
Right.
Elliot?
Yeah.
Let's hear a question from Sally
I have,
in Seattle.
yeah, I can be kind of a question pick, so I'll try to ask 2 questions. And I also wanted to, Heather and I are advocates. We're just sitting in our houses learning, and we're not doing any work out in the community like all of you. So I wanted to offer Elliot just a query as to whether you have connected with John Ehrenfeld from Seattle's Fire Health One. He could be an amazing resource for you. This layers into my questions, but they now have 4 crisis response units in the downtown and University District in areas in Seattle. I think it's been a year and a half, and he could just be a fabulous resource for you. If you put your, oh great, I was gonna say, if you put your email in there, we'll connect you with John. Heather and I have gotten to know him really well, mostly through a connection of Heather's, and we had lunch with their 4 crisis teams, all the firefighters and their social workers that respond with them. And a couple questions came up there. First of all, they all really love the work, but there were questions about, I wonder how you're managing staffing, because one of the things the firefighters who are on these units said is they love the work, but it's kind of regular schedule work, whereas their firefighter work is, I don't know what it is, 3 days on, 25 off. I'm exaggerating. It's not like that, but that built a different kind of lifestyle for them. So that's one challenge for them. And then a second question, you mentioned the union, this is all layered in there, the union issues that you had to work with fire. And that's one thing we're finding to be a struggle, because we love the fire department model, side note. So can you answer how you convinced firefighters to work a different kind of schedule, and then what union challenges you might have had that could be watchwords, and how you resolve those?
Yeah, definitely. We have no sworn members on our crew. I have no sworn members in our vertical. They're in their houses doing their thing. We interact with them. We share facilities like the training tower. We have overlap. Some of my responders are dating firefighters. It is what it is. The fire world is a small world out here, and people are connected. So we do feel supported, generally by and large, with the fire department. We did have one meeting early on with their president, and wasn't in the room, but it didn't go over as smoothly as it had. And I think there was just some miscommunication and a little bit of delivery issues, but it was the first meeting. I think we talked about it in an effort to try to learn, but everybody felt bad how it all went down. So we're having these other meetings with them just so that they understand the ways of working, to assure them that we're not going to be in the houses. We're not going to be taking away their work, because we have a very limited vision of what we can help and impact. That said, the other unions, though, I wish it was just one union. It's like 3. And so we have the local 55, which is the firefighters. It's all good. We knew we were going to deal with them. They're within the house. The second one is the SEIU 1021, which represents our dispatchers. The dispatchers, I could be headed for a meet and confer potentially, because they are seeing this is like I said earlier, this is a total departure of their traditional skill. So having to retrain them and add that, there is an addition to duty. It may mean only 7, 8 more calls a shift, but that is different. And so they have brought it to their attention. All of this probably could have been avoided if my first day I walked down there and said, I'm Elliott, I'm with Macro. I'm the new Macro program manager. Help me get dispatch ready. If I had done that from the jump, I think I would have allowed them more than enough time, but they didn't have a manager in place. We were running a mile a minute, and it was, this didn't go the way I had planned. But that to say is, we have a new dispatch manager. We're talking it through with them. They have said we've improved every day, which really, adds to the challenge of why we didn't get so many calls yesterday. It was like, if we needed to see the improvement, I wanted to see that and the little tweaks that we could discuss. But, that's all. It's all part of these growing pains, or as I've been saying, the sausage making. Like, I need to grind up all these learnings from the last few days and just be like, okay, here's our new base. Here's what's going to happen moving forward. Here's the expectations for everybody, and spell it out explicitly clearly. Have checklist and that they can do every day they're on duty, that they have to check off, that we know, okay, you've done this, you've done this, you've done this, and everybody in the crew has to sign off, so that there is more sharing of responsibilities. I think when there's 2 people on a rig, it'll get very clear. But when we've had 3 or 4 people together, it's been it's been a lot. And again, the days that they've been on has been something. We may switch them to a 10-4 schedule. So 10 hours on, 4 days a week. That would allow me for a little bit more coverage time-wise, especially when we add a secondary shift. We could have a swing shift in there so we're never offline. But that could present some payroll issues. And I want to make sure that I get overtime figured out before I start tweaking their schedule too much. I understand that a lot of these folks in the first response place, overtime is a big deal. And you don't have to necessarily double your salary, but being able to put in those extra hours and do this, it's important to them. So I want to have that built in sooner rather than later.
So Elliott, thank you for that answer, and a clarification again. So your EMTs that are with your folks with lived experience, they're not also firefighters. So okay, interesting.
Some want to be, and they're in the different, Fire One Academy and all this and that, trying to be that. And some will inevitably do it. We're too close being within the fire department that you're gonna think like, okay, I do this, it's like a leg in. And it very well may be for some people, but
Right.
I think the vast majority of folks will start to see like, well, I can do this, I can do this job, I can make it my own, I can have this as a career. This is a city government position. You do 5 years, you get your pension, you get a pension. And so it's like that, I think, is a big thing for folks. We have one young lady who's 22. If I was her at 22 when I could do this, I wouldn't do anything else. I would just roll with this program, see what it does, just grow with it. You can do this for 30 years, however long you want, and walk out of the city of Oakland paid, so it's at like 55, which is unheard of, now. Like, I think my mom did that at like 56 or something like that. They don't let that happen anymore, but you're in a good position. So I'm grateful for that. And I hope that as time evolves, people look at macro as a career path. And not everybody's a firefighter. It's just the cold hard
Let's
truth.
get our last question from Elizabeth.
Maybe this is like proprietary information, but for a person that's working with you 40 hours a week, what are you paying them? And I know your cost of living is quite different than in Iowa, but
so we pay more than pretty much every other EMT group in the Bay Area. And I want to say like 90% more than than the rest of them. They're making 65 is the floor. Yeah. It's the floor. And I'd like the floor to go up because I think that there's going to be a cap on the ceiling one day. So if I could get the floor up, even though if the cap isn't, even if it was 15, 20 more, and that was just your cap, no matter what. Some of these firefighters and cops are making $300K or more a year, just regular folks. So if I know that they'll never have that capability, but at the floor, walk in close to 100, and even with overtime, be in play, I think that would do a lot in terms of the true ethos of the program and giving people an opportunity to stay. Because even right now, with what they're making, it's difficult to stay in Oakland. I'm the program manager. I live I pay my aunt rent. That's the only reason why it works for me. So I understand the challenges that they're going through, but that's the long plan. And I think that's where we'll run into probably some more challenges with other folks because it's all connected, who makes
Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah.
But if we're saving money, I think
my boss is in here. Are you listening? Got it? Okay.
So that's my whole thing. Like, if we're saving money from these other services, it should come home. And that means 2 new apparatuses for the fire department and a, $5 an hour raise for my people. Like, okay, like if that's the plan every year, that's fine. We'll get there. That's how I see it.
Well, you've stumbled into the subject for our next month's meeting, which will be recruitment and incentives. So I'm hoping that everybody will dial in and listen to. We'll have a couple of HR specialists come in and give us some tricks of the trade of how to get people to fill out those applications, the right people who will stick around.
Yep.
Any last comments, Elliott, just as we're wrapping up this this first session?
Yeah, I think this is great, y'all. I want to do more. We're here, Oakland's here to be involved. Jason, I'll send you over what we've developed with our policies and procedures and pretty much everything like everybody else so that we can have a page there. You know, let's talk about this stuff all the time, y'all. Like, that's the only way this is going to get better. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I don't have all the answers, but we all can figure this out. Like, I have nothing but respect for Cahoots, but we all there should have been an AMSA with them years ago, but we're here today and we're challenged with building it. And it's probably best that it's outside their sphere. Oakland is here to participate, to help build this, to encourage y'all learnings this summer. If y'all want to come out, do ride-alongs, meet our crew. Like, we want to see that. We want y'all to learn from us and we want to learn from y'all. The one thing that any connections about the dispatching training, I saw a couple things. Please feel to share my email and make those connections. I'm looking for like the cues, the script, the stuff. We're going to be making cheat sheets for our teams because we just have to improve every day. I think a lot of these other organizations, they either look away, they don't want the critique and the criticism. That's the only way we're going to get past this pilot phase. If we set that culture of looking within to be better, to weed out what's not working and really support my responders to grow, because I'm not out there. I'm not doing it. I talk a lot that I could, I saw this, and this, but I'm not in the van. I'm not making the calls. So I have to have faith in them and put them in the best position to succeed, as I imagine you all would do with your teams. So we're here. Y'all got my email. Don't hesitate. And I look forward to next month and all the subsequent months and meetings after that. And thank you, Jason, for everything, brother.
Thank you, Elliott. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you all next month. We'll send an email out and put it on your schedule. Until then, take care.
Ciao, y'all.